There we go. Hello there, Wrestless fans. Today on this edition of Ringside Chats, we have yet another very special guest with us today. He is a multi-time tag team champion in the independent scene, a 16-year veteran of this wrestling business. And you can see him on WWE and AEW television, but he's currently performing for promotions like Reality of Wrestling and New Texas Pro. Catch him July 15th at Summer of Champions 2023 in a 6-man ladder match for the ROW Television Championship. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Erik Lockhart. How are you today, man?
I'm doing all right, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I guess I'll just get right into it, and I just want to know more about the roots of your career. You and your brother Andrew were trained by Greg Gagne, son of the legendary Vern Gagne, of course, a pioneer of professional wrestling, and of course you and your brother were some of the last products of that wrestling facility. I want to ask how that experience was for you. I mean, it's definitely got to be a huge honor of getting trained by just huge legends in the business, like pre-Hulkamania, pre all of that. Is there anything from those days that resonate you to this day?
I still talk to Greg to this day, and I'm always learning. Growing up in the Midwest, AWA was the thing for our parents anyway. We grew up on WWE, but we were still aware of the Gagne name and the clout that it had, especially up in that area. But across wrestling in general. And Greg's actually still training people this day. We were the last official people to be trained under Greg and Vern's style of training. And we actually got to sit under Vern's learning tree, which no one can say anymore since he's passed. But he's helping out Mr. Kennedy's or Mr. Anderson's school up in Minnesota area. I'm not sure, it's Minneapolis, St. Paul up there somewhere. And he's still training people that you're seeing on TV today. Like he had a big hand in Tiffany Stratton's training. So yeah, he's still at it. And a couple things that resonate with me from Greg is I guess the one thing is always that I still use to this day is everyone's the same size on the mat. So he's like, it doesn't matter the height when you're standing because our goal is to get down to the mat anyway. We're all the same size down to the mat. So, and if another thing he'd say is if you believe what you're saying, the people will believe what you're saying. So he had simple, quick little things like that in between all the kicking our butt in the ring because it legit what people hear about Gagne training, you gotta do 1,000 squats before you even get in the ring. Going to be a lot of cardio training. It's all true. I've done 1,000 squats so many times in my life. I can't even tell you how many sets of that I've done, but it prepares you. And I wouldn't have wanted to have been trained any other way. And I think that people should go through harder training. But yeah, it was a long-winded answer to your question. No, good. And I appreciate that we got hooked up with Greg early on. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I see that sometimes you're a guest when it comes to training in some facilities. Do you use any of those, Gagne, skills? Or would you tell them, hey, do your 100 squats right now?
Yeah, when I'm a guest somewhere, it's a little different. If it was my students, my school, and I had them from square one, we would work in all that conditioning stuff. Would I make everyone do 1,000? I don't know. I would encourage them to, on their own time, because that's where a lot of my squats have been done. Because we only had Greg for limited times. He'd come and train with us on Wednesday afternoons, my brother and I. And we'd have him for 2 hours. So he didn't want to waste a ton of time with squats. If you do 1,000 squats, first time doing it, it took me about half an hour. It's half an hour of just squatting the whole time. So that eats up a lot of your time, and you get quicker at it the more you do them. But when I come in as a guest to places, I'm more so the one thing I incorporate from my Gagne training is any questions they have, I'm gonna always provide an answer. Hey, why do you do something this way as opposed to grabbing a wrist lock this way, like I've learned elsewhere? And I'll tell them why. Well, legitimately, if you were to grab it, you would do it this way. If you were in a real fight, you wouldn't turn your back to a guy to grab his arm because then he's going to put you in a chokehold. So you're going to turn your body the other way where he can't access you and snatch his wrist that way. And that's actually something I was just teaching last week. down here in Orlando. So.
And you said that Vern Gagne was also kind of a part of your training as well?
So at that point, he was in a home, so he never got to come down to the ring. But they were doing a special showing of the original Wrestler movie that he starred in with Billy Robinson. So we went to a theater in downtown St. Paul, Minneapolis, and somewhere up there, Minnesota, where they had some of the old guys come out and they rescreened the movie like a update. Well, not really updated, but a what's the, like, not refurbished, but what's the word? Like remastered, like a remaster. Like they cleaned it up. It looked nicer because it was, it was grainy. It was an older movie. But he was there and we got to sit and chat with him a little bit. And he wasn't all there like when you talk to him just as an individual or person to person. But as soon as you start talking about wrestling, like the light would just turn on and he could talk wrestling still. And one of the old AWA announcers got up, and Vern couldn't really stand and stuff on his own, but he got up on the stage before the movie and announced Vern because he wanted to just do it one last time. It's like the AWA champion, Vern Gagne. And Vern stood up out of his chair and people were looking at him because he couldn't stand without help usually. But as soon as you heard his ring introduction, he popped right up. It was really cool to be there and see that and talk to him a little bit about wrestling. And he had a firm ass handshake, man. Like I can't remember how old he was at that time, but I know it was his last few years and still strong.
Yeah, man. Once you live wrestling, wrestling's in you forever. But I guess for the post Gagne training, after that, what would you say is some impactful advice to your career from like other people outside of that?
So I always say that Vern taught me to, not Vern, Greg more so taught me to pro wrestle, and then Booker T taught me sports entertainment. So when I moved to Houston with my brother and we started training down there in 2012, 2013, Booker brought a whole different aspect to our training. We still were very old school to the fact, like we get back to the buckle and look at the ref and be like, he pulled my hair and stuff like that. And Booker's like, you see that on TV anymore? Nobody's doing that stuff. like, okay, yeah, fair enough. And I knew well enough, like I can still work in some old school references and stuff where Booker would be like, okay, these kids get it. Because he came up to me, he's like, so you two want to be the Hardy Boys, huh? I was like, we're more looking to be the Von Erichs. And then he turned around and he's like, it's a good answer. And that was like my first big meeting book. So I was like, okay, so he appreciates the history of the business, definitely. Like I would never say Booker doesn't. But at the same time, he knows that it needs to be updated. And Booker is very Shakespearean, right? He wants all this stuff to be like a movie, and he talks a lot about the cool factor. So he's like, yeah, you can do a hip toss, and like guys do hip tosses like this. I do hip tosses like this, boom, and like I'm gonna look cool doing it. Like so, Booker's always thinking cameras and TV, so that helped out a lot as it relates to like television wrestling, as opposed to just a regular arena wrestling mentality.
I guess going off that, so you started your career up north around the Minnesota area, and you've wrestled up north in Canada before, and I think the Wisconsin area too. What initially led you to move down to Texas to begin training and wrestling for Reality Wrestling?
We traveled the roads after training with Greg in the Midwest. Actually, more so myself. I traveled them for 4 years, and I wrestled every Saturday and Sunday. This promotion I was working with at the time, they would book like a small handful of guys, and we'd do smaller towns and stuff like that. So you'd wrestle 2 to 3 times a night because it was just a smaller crew. So you start adding that up, and like I hit 1,000 matches 4 years into my career, something like that, which is insane when you think about like how many like actual matches that is. But when you wrestle 8, 9, 10 times like a weekend, because it was like 3 to 4 times a night. So and it'd be either Saturday and Sunday or Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So you could have anywhere from like 6 to 12 matches a weekend. What was the question again?
How did you move down from the north?
Yeah. So after doing that for a while, as you can see, those 1,000 matches take their toll.
No, of course.
A lot of bumps. After doing that for a while, I talked to Greg. I'm like, okay, so what's the next step? And we had went to a Raw or SmackDown at the Target Center in Minneapolis, and that was back before there was like an actual official list. Indie guys would just show up in the afternoon and try to like get a look and get in the ring and stuff. So I showed up, but I showed up with Greg. So then everyone looked at me different because there was a lot of people working there that obviously knew who Greg was, and he had just finished working with the company a few years before. So I mean, he was still pretty fresh in there when he was working on the creative team. So we got to talking to some people, and Booker's one of the people we talked to, and he talked about his school down in Houston. And I didn't even remember this until I found like a post-it note where I scratched all these details on like his school and the phone number to his school at the time. Like I found it years after I'd already been at his school. I'm like, we did talk to him that night. But when Greg and I were kind of strategizing, like, okay, what's next? He said, well, let me put in a call to Booker and I'll tell him that you're coming down. So my plan was to go alone. And then my brother's like, well, I want to come with. Like, I don't want to be stuck like in the Midwest if you're going to travel elsewhere. So we got in the car and drove 22 hours down to Houston from Wisconsin. And we had nowhere else to go. So we just pulled up to the school and went right into training. I was just talking to my brother a couple of weeks ago that I think that's the longest anyone can say they've commuted to go to training, because we literally were in the car 22 hours straight. We didn't stop. We just took turns driving. I mean, we stopped for gas and stuff, but no hotels. We took turns driving so the other guy could sleep. And we got there like on little food, little sleep, and got in the ring like, let's try to impress Booker. Like, I don't advise it. Like, it's not the best way to do it. Make sure you're rested and healthy and nourished when you're going in, like to try to impress somebody. But we did enough for him to be like, okay, like, yeah, you guys can stick around. Like, he saw enough in us that first night. You know, he stopped us like right away because I literally got in the ring and did he pull my hair? It was like, okay, cut. But yeah, it's like Greg just made a phone call and like, hey, my guys come down. Booker didn't promise anything, but he said he'd give us a look. And we did well enough where 2-3 months later, we became pretty regular on his program. So.
Yeah, I mean, it shows the power of connections in the wrestling business, definitely.
100%. Yeah.
And I get like, so when you did get like that, I guess, sort of approval from Booker T, like, so what happened after, right? Like, did you go straight back up to Minnesota again, or did you somehow?
No, then we were like, okay, now we need to figure out where to live. And we were with a friend, his name is Troy, who went to high school and college with Shelton Benjamin. Mm-hmm. So we had met Shelton a couple of times when he would be in town, like up in the Midwest to wrestle with WWE back when we first started training. So he would come out to our ring once in a while that we had up there. We bought a ring to train with Greg. We didn't, but our dad bought it for us. We were still in high school. And so we were aware of Sheldon. He was aware of us. So he put us up for 3 days when we first got down there. So we crashed at his place. And like Andrew and I still haven't forgotten about that. There's a lot of people that helped us out on the way. We got a lot of lucky breaks. For as much like breaks that we don't get, like you forget about like, there is some lucky things though that have happened. But it's all because the way we treat people and the way they like reciprocate that, because we are respectful and we just want to help. And we give a lot back to wrestling. So after 3 days there, he had to go to Japan. I think he was working with New Japan at the time. So he's like, okay, I need to bounce. So we drove around with our friend Troy because he knew, like I said, he knew Shelton down there already. So that would help us with somewhere to stay. And then he was going to kind of help us find our way. We just bounced around to some apartments. We had some savings and stuff. We found an apartment that was doing a Black Friday deal because we moved down there in November and like got a decent deal in a really nice area. So we lived in that area for about 6 months because that's all the deal was for, is like a half a year. And then we kind of started bouncing around to wherever we could afford in Houston and just make it work. It's no different than anyone else's story that just picks up, moves shop elsewhere. And that's what we had to do.
Very, very, very interesting. And very cool that you lived with, Shelton Benjamin for a few months out of all people,
No, 2 days.
A few days. Okay, so it's not months, yeah, days. I'm sorry, I don't know.
No, you put it up 2 or 3 days and then you had to go. But no, still, we appreciate the heck out of it because at least it gave us a bed to sleep in going down there.
So, do you think there's a huge difference or any difference at all between like a United States or a Northern United States audience / Canadian audience versus an audience down here in like Texas or even Florida?
It's different everywhere. And like I pick up on that stuff quick just from, I'm big on before I even go and wrestle. If I open, that's one thing you gotta learn on the go. But if I'm later in the card, I'll go and watch all matches live. I don't like watching monitors and stuff because I want to feel what the audience is doing. So I pick up on that stuff relatively quick. I know when I was, we were wrestling down in Orlando, and my brother had moved back to Minneapolis, that area, Wisconsin-ish, for a while. And different things work up there. So he came down, and we started doing a little bit of tag stuff in Orlando. And he would try to do like more comedy wrestling, right? Like, it just didn't work down here. There's so much, Impact was down here at the time. NXT was here, still here, but there was just so much, and MLW was here a lot during that time too. So there's so much like wrestling that like Andrew tried to do some of the like comedy stuff, and people just sat there like silent.
Yeah.
It's like that stuff doesn't really work down here. But like I was able to pick up on that quick, and Booker always used to talk about that too. He's like, there's different sections of this country. And some people in the South like this type of wrestling. And when you go up in the Northeast, it needs to be a little bit more physical and they can't see through it as much. And in the Midwest, you can get away with some comedy and stuff like that. And that's definitely true. Houston specifically, they're really loyal to their Houstonian people. But even if you're not, like, they treat me like I'm from Houston down there, like the audience is. They're very welcoming. They welcome me back every time I go there. And there's a lot of people that like kind of watch me grow up on Booker's programming. So they like wrestling and they like their homemade stars. Up in like the Midwest, they like their comedy stuff. I wrestle little people more times than I can count. Like, I think, I don't know how many people can say, but my brother and I had a tag team match against two little people girls.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to use the proper terminology, and like I knew them like personally, and they didn't care what they were called as long as you were cool with them. It was just one of those type of things. Mm-hmm. But still, like, it was a little girl tag team, and we wrestled them. But their combined weight was probably more than ours, even though their height was half of ours. So I mean, there were some sicker girls. It's just ridiculous. We were having a match with them outside, and then it was nighttime, and it started raining, and the ring was all slick, and it's dangerous conditions. But it was just one of those that you look back and now, and it's funny. Like, yeah, we were just in a wet ring, pretty much doing like a slip and slide match with two little girls, little people. So that worked up there. Wouldn't work everywhere. And definitely in Orlando, like I said, they like their wrestling. They like a little bit more of the athletic, just straight-laced, let's go have a competition. So.
Yeah, definitely. And again, just a reminder, we're talking about little people wrestling, not actual children. Erik Lockhart, I'm sure, is not fighting children.
Little women. Little women.
There you go.
Yeah. The micro wrestlers, there's micro championship wrestling. So yeah, there was two female micro wrestlers. Yeah. So. Minis. There you go. That's what WWE uses. Minis is yeah.
But throughout almost your whole career, you were known as a tag team wrestler with your brother Andrew, the brothers Lockhart, of course. And now I feel like you're more of a solo wrestler. So I have to ask. I was trying to look some things up and do my homework, of course. But I guess, why did this split happen?
So it wasn't necessarily a split, I guess. I mean, yeah. From your vantage point, I guess it does look like that. Mm-hmm. When I wrestled in the Midwest, we weren't a tag team. Like, I wrestled all those towns I was talking about by myself. It was just Erik Lockhart. And Andrew actually wrestled under a completely different name for a lot of those years. And once in a while, when we team, we'd be like, okay, well, you can just be Andrew Lockhart, like, and we'll be the brothers Lockhart. I just never liked Lockhart brothers because there was already Steiner brothers and Beverly brothers and stuff like that. So I wanted to just flip it. Well, the brothers Lockhart, just to make it different. And put emphasis on the Lockhart, Erik Lockhart, Andrew Lockhart, brothers Lockhart. It keeps ending with Lockhart. So we would just do that here and there, not often. When we moved, and then people saw us walk into the school together at Booker's, it was immediately like, now we can start a tag team division, because they didn't have one at the time. They just kind of had random tag teams and stuff if they wanted to do a tag match, but there was no tag titles. So they kind of decided they wanted to build a division around us. So all Texas fans ever knew me as was a tag team wrestler. And I'm like, I held singles titles up in the Midwest, but I have no problem with it, because tag team wrestling is so fun. And to learn from, like, Greg did most of his career as a tag team wrestler. Booker is a Hall of Fame tag team wrestler. So we had, and when we moved out to Orlando, we trained with Alpha, the Wild Samoans. So we had so much great tag team knowledge bestowed upon us that I have a blast tag team wrestling. But injuries kind of like put Andrew like on the sideline a little bit. Nothing serious, but enough to, like, you know, make him kind of think about his options. And like, he has a lot of other interests. He likes to do photography. He likes to act. He's been getting cast and acting things left and right down in Orlando. I don't have any other interest. Like, if I'm not in a ring, I'm just bored, you know, angry at home because I'd rather be in the ring. So I was like, okay, well, now I can go back to kind of focusing on more the singles path and trying to show people like what Erik Lockhart can do as a singles act. So it's been developing, and it's going to keep developing. Like, my brain never stops thinking wrestling. So a lot of it right now just feels like one half of the Brothers Lockhart in the presentation. But stay tuned. Like, the story is going to continue. There's going to be fresh pages and new pages being turned, new chapters. So let's go.
Of course, man. How's that? I guess from being in, you know, Houston, of course, and Texas, being known as this tag team. How's this solo run? You showcasing yourself that you're not just a tag team star, you're also a solo star. How's that transition been for you here? Is there any, like, and I guess tag team wrestling versus singles wrestling, is there any like similarities and differences between those two?
It's just, I mean, obviously, because there's less bodies like involved in just like one-on-one competition. So it's all on you. There's no tagging out to catch your breath. You need to find your breaths on your own in the ring. And there's more pressure. You can find a lot of longer you do tag team. You can find a lot of shortcuts of stuff that really works, and you don't even have to be exerting that much energy, because you can kind of go 50-50 with your partner. Hence why, you know, the double team is an effective strategy in tag team wrestling. But as a solo act, it's more so just finding, it's kind of like finding your voice, like if you were a singer. Like, you're trying to kind of find your voice, find your way, because I know what I did back in the Midwest, but like I said, that was a different area, and I don't want to necessarily go backwards. I always want to go forward. The first incarnations of Erik Lockhart were very, we started, even before we trained with Greg, we trained Lucha Libre, and they looked at me like Shawn Michaels. And then their equivalent was Latin Lover. So they wanted me to be like a mini Latin Lover, essentially, because I was young, but I had the long hair and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, but no one's going to think Latin Lover if I come out as like a white guy with long hair and hearts on my trunks. They're going to think I'm being Shawn Michaels. And that's what it felt like. But they were like, oh, no, Latin Lover is more of like a Chippendale type of. I'm like, yeah, but I'm a skinny 17-year-old kid. Like, I don't want that Chippendale. But I was still, you put in the time and start to look that part a little bit more. And I was very comfortable with all that. And then when we moved to Houston, completely changed. Like, we threw that stuff out the window, because I'm like, I don't want those comparisons as a tag team. We're going to present ourselves differently. We still had tearaway pants, but that was just because, like, it works when you tear out your pants. You can listen to the female reaction. You're like, I guess we'll keep that. So it's now evolving again, but doing it in front of an audience that looks at you one way, like a lot of the Houston audiences do, and Texas in general. Like, oh yeah, it's Erik Lockhart. He's a tag team wrestler. Like, it has been. It's been a curve, and like, I wouldn't even say a learning curve so much, but just, well, maybe a learning curve for the audience to try to look at me in a different way. And I understand that. That's fine. So I just put in the work, and like, the creativity in the ring definitely helps me. I know I know I can stand out because I look at wrestling so different from a lot of people, where I can see like where I want to end, like an end product, and then I can figure out creative ways to get there, just to get somebody in like a body scissor or something. Like I can take a completely different path than most people would, just wrapping their legs around someone. Uh, so that's kind of how I've had to, just that creativity in the ring has helped me kind of stand out as a solo act. And then just picking up important wins, like New Texas, like picked up a win over JJ Blake. He's the first Triple Crown champion in the company, and that kind of started my projection. I had a match with Shane Taylor. I didn't come out victorious, but it caught a lot of attention because I just took an ass whooping and wouldn't stay down. And then I wrestled Ninja Mac a couple months ago and picked up a win over him. And like just building that resume. I'm pseudo number one contender right now because I'm in limbo with Max Heights over that number one contendership. But like I have Brian Keith in my sights. He's got to get past Max first. But like I want a piece of that. Like we don't have to sit and talk about Brian Keith. Like anyone that understands independent wrestling, follows independent wrestling, knows the resume that he's built and the bounties that he's collected. But like I'm not looking to hire him to collect any bounties, but I'm looking to collect some of that championship gold that he's holding because I want those same opportunities. And Brian and I go way back. And when we first moved down to Houston, Brian didn't have a car to get to training, and my brother and I would give him rides to training and stuff. So like he would sit in the car and we'd talk wrestling, and we went back and forth. My first match in Houston wasn't even for Reality of Wrestling. It was Texas All-Star, I think. I'm not 100 on that, but it was in like a Mexican flea market, and it was against Brian and Jonathan Vega. They were tag teaming as the Texas Young Guns or something along that line. And I didn't even team with my brother. I teamed with Aiden Cristiano just because like he liked me in training. He's like, hey, I got a booking, but it's not for both you. I just need one guy. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So my first match in Texas that I remember anyway, I might be wrong on that. I might have had one in books before I did that. But the first thing outside Reality of Wrestling anyway was with Brian Keith. So, and that's the last time we ever even touched in a ring. It was a tag match. We've never wrestled singles. We trained together a few times, but can't wait to mix it up with him again. So we wrestled one other time, in Reality of Wrestling. My brother and I did wrestle him and Jonathan Vega again. But yeah, it's always only been tag team. I can't remember who won the first match. I know the second time we beat him, so.
Yeah, I'm excited. Definitely. You need to start building up that resume. You need to start getting up them titles. And us here in Wrestless, we support Erik Lockhart here right now. I do kind of want to talk about you mentioning in the Midwest that you were kind of a solo star. I believe I saw that you were wrestling in Rock and Roll Wrestling, winning the world championship there too. I believe so, right?
We didn't really have a world championship. Like it was kind of a traveling, like kind of a circus like show. That's where we wrestled a lot of little people. They had little people, and then they had a 7-foot giant. And then I was just the normal guy that had to learn to wrestle everybody. So I'd wrestle females, males, giants, little people, random Doink the Clowns and other masked people that would just come in. So it was more of a sideshow. It wasn't like a promotion where they had champions by any means. Some guy that did help out with the booking a little bit bought like a Rock and Roll Wrestling championship. So just some nights I would come into town like, here's your champion, just so I could get beat by like the hero in the end of the night.
Okay.
Stuff like that. So the only the major title I won up there was Eddie Sharkey's promotion, if you're familiar with that name. He helped train the Road Warriors and different guys, and like helped get 1-2-3 Kid or X-Pac on the map. He had a promotion up there called PWA. I believe it was Pro Wrestling America, but don't quote me on that. And I became the youngest champion in their history, I believe. I was only had to be 17, no more than 18, maybe 19, but like definitely wasn't even 20 yet, and won their heavyweight title. So I was I also had the shortest reign in their history, but the fact that I was the youngest is what I prefer to talk about. So
yeah, also I think I did see that in a Wikipedia page. So yeah, there you go. And I think I also saw you in a match with. Did you ever wrestle with the Honky Tonk Man?
Oh, several times. I got
Yeah,
a win over the Honky Tonk Man. There are not a lot of people can say that either.
that's already a huge thing in the resume, man. Screw all the other resumes. you
Yeah.
beat the Honky Tonk Man. How was that? Right, he's a huge
Um,
legend in the
I
business.
wrestled Honky a lot, to the point where like we got comfortable with him very much, and like he knew us and would get excited to see us because Rock and Roll Wrestling liked to bring him in. Because Honky's just easy. Like you bring him in and he's not going to complain. Like he'll get in the like ring truck with all of us and just ride to the next town. I'm not going to say he's going to sit and help put up the ring, but he shouldn't have to. None of us wrestled at WrestleMania 3. But Honky sure did. But like just the relationship I built with him over a couple of years of working with him was really cool. And yeah, he really took my brother and I. He had come into the locker room one time, and it was a bigger show with like a lot of people that didn't know who he was, but like we knew who he was, and we'd caught up with him and stuff on the road. So he came in. I was like, "What? Aren't you the guy that managed Rockabilly?" And he just like he dropped his bags. He's like, "That's how I want to be remembered."
Oh man.
But no, he was very cool. Like he'd got a little dinged up one night, like a Saturday night, and then we were wrestling Sunday evening, afternoon, or something. And he tried to pay me a compliment. I was just young and dumb, and like had to make a joke instead of just saying like, "Hey, thank you." But he had said like, because I'd asked him, "You look a little hurt," and he's like, "Yeah, luckily I'm working with someone that like gets it and is going to take care of me tonight. I'm like working a good worker." He was working me. He was trying to compliment me, and I was like, "Oh, really? Who you working?" Instead of just taking the compliment, he just like he just kind of shook his head at me and like, you just kind of got to learn those things when you're young. Like, yeah, just take a compliment. Like he's trying to give you one, and then you have to make like a smart ass comment like this. Yeah. But yeah, Honky he's great to work with. In the match, a couple matches where like I did get a win on him is because he knew I was coming back later in the night because like I said, I'd work multiple times a night. He's like, I don't need to beat Kid. He'd call me Kid. That whole crew called me Kid because I was the youngest one. And besides my brother, I was always the youngest one there. So he's like, I don't need to beat Kid. Like we can, he can steal one on me. Just put my feet in the ropes, grab his trunks, whatever. And then we can come back later in the night and I can beat him because we were all going to come back in like a 6-man tag anyway. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll beat him in the end of the night. Like, let's not kill him as soon as we go out there. The promoter was like, he just didn't know if he'd be cool with it. So we'd always just, when known guys would come in, you're going to do the favor for them. That's just how it works. So the fact that he took a liking to me and was cool enough with me to be like, no, let's let him have his moment, and then we'll get back to it later in the night. Like I don't forget stuff like that. So
yeah, and especially I bet for you as a young wrestler, having someone who kind of takes a liking to you, and someone who's like the longest Intercontinental Champion, or
great
in WWE. Such an honor, I bet. I also have to ask, you and your brother had the opportunity to participate in the AML title #1 contendership Battle Royal in WrestleCade 2015. And you had incredible legends like, Brutus Beefcake, Ernest Miller, Shane Douglas, et cetera, et cetera. How does it feel for you to step with all these big names all in one ring in a Battle Royal situation?
We'd had the pleasure of working with Brutus Beefcake back in Rock and Roll Wrestling a couple times. So like we were familiar with him, didn't know if he remembered us. Everyone else we had never stepped in the ring with. So yeah, it was really cool. Just we came out to the ring, and when we got in the ring and turned around and looked at the stage, and then Blue Meanie came out next. And he came out and did his Blue Meanie dance, and the whole crowd just exploded. And Andrew and I are sitting there looking at each other, okay, that's pretty cool. And I want to say Blue Meanie threw me out because there was a video that circulated for a little bit, or maybe it was just a video of the Battle Royal, but I haven't seen it like since like we first saw it back, like, right after it happened. But the camera finds Andrew and I on the floor after we've both been eliminated, and you can hear him like ask me like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I just got eliminated by the Blue Meanie. Like, yeah, in character, but like still, like honestly, that's cool to say. So yeah, That was fun. When I go back and look, and I'm like, I didn't even realize some of the guys that were in that battle royal because there were so many in there. You go back and I completely forgot, like you said, Ernest Miller, completely forgot he was in there. But you're right, he was. Like once you said, that's right, he was one of those guys. I think Glacier was in there. Like it was wild. Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun experience. Good guy. Like I said, you did your research. Good work.
Of course, man. I got to do my homework, and but did you ever like talk to like I guess any of these legends after the show, and they're like, "Good work, kid," you know? Because again, tons of legends in that battle royal.
In the battle royal, they were like, "Oh, you were in there." Like they don't remember. There's so many bodies. Yeah. So like, we did just get to chat to some people just in general, but not necessarily about, hey, good work and like taking those punches and getting thrown over the top rope. Like there's you can't really gauge someone's work in a battle royal environment.
Yeah.
But everyone that I've actually had a match with or tag team match with, they've been very complimentary of us. So. At WrestleCade in particular, no, but the night before that, Andrew and I wrestled the American Wolves when they were Impact Tag Team Champions.
Yeah.
It was for the Impact titles, so that was a cool thing to be able to say we've done together too, is that have an Impact Tag Team title match. And they were complimentary of us and said that we were good because they, when you meet someone for the first time, they don't really know, and they have their stuff that they want to go out there and do, but then they got in the back and like, okay, like you guys are good. And like Booker and Stevie Ray were at that same convention with us because we were there was Andrew, myself, and 3 or 4 other guys that were like the row representatives going up there and like showing what Reality of Wrestling had up in the Carolinas. So they were very vocal during the match because they were like standing behind the audience. You could hear Booker and Stevie like yelling and cheering us on and stuff and overreacting to things that would happen. And that was one of the things that Eddie Edwards had said when we got in the back. He was talking to Davey, and he was like, "You see Booker out there?" Like he was kind of like it was like a fanboy moment for him, like you see, like because Booker's reacting to things he would do to like Booker's boys, like looking at Andrew and I as like his boys, like and wanting us to take that win. So yeah, that was cool, and they were they're nice. There's definitely a handful of people. Like Honky was always really quick to compliment and say like, yeah, you should be doing things on higher levels. And I've had a lot of people tell me that, and it's like, well, it's not for lack of trying. It just like hasn't panned out yet. But like I'm gonna keep chipping away. Like good things come to those who wait. That's what Triple H said. So
yeah.
So we're gonna keep not waiting so much, but we're gonna keep pushing.
Of course. And I guess also kind of on that note, I saw you take heavy pride, and of course, as you should, when being praised by another legend in the wrestling business, Lance Storm. So I saw like a tweet saying you need this guy booked, Erik Lockhart. This guy's cool. Did you get the chance to meet him in person? Did he see your work in person, or was it in a virtual setting?
Yeah. Yep. So the Arnold Classic was happening up in Columbus, Ohio, and I decided to go up there because I learned that Impact was doing a gut check that weekend. So show up, and there was 93 of us that showed up to try to get a look, and Lance Storm was put in charge of it. Him and Johnny Bravo from Impact helped lead the whole thing. And he only had 3 hours, and he wanted to at least watch everyone have a 5-minute match. So, with 92 people, 93. So I think one of them was a referee though. So 92 wrestlers, that's whatever. There's 46 matches that you got to try to do in 3 hours. That's a long day. And I'd wrestled with a guy. I can't remember his full working name, but Black Diamond I know was his moniker. And Lance at the end of it said that he and I had the best match. Look at the whole day, so that's 46 matches. And they picked 5 finalists to get in the ring. So my opponent and I both got chosen, and then 3 other people, just individuals for matches. We were the only 2 guys that actually wrestled each other to be put into the finals. Everyone else, their opponent, didn't get into the finals. So it's 4 guys and 1 girl, and they were going to give the top 2 Impact contracts, and I was number 3. I'm like, man, I'd rather be 93 than be 3. To be that close, that sucks. because it was right there. But he pulled me aside afterwards because, I mean, you could see how it affected me. Where he's like, yeah, just, you do this for so long, you want something, you know? It's like give me a win here. So he pulled me aside afterwards. It's like, no, like, you got it. I need you to be a little bit more selfish in the ring. But, you know, being a tag team wrestler, I went up there with my brother. We were hoping we'd be able to have a tag team match. But he was the first one, like, to focus in on me as an individual in some years, because everyone looks at me as a tag wrestler we've been talking about. He was like, no, you have something that he saw just watching a 5-minute match and a couple of drills beforehand. And he told me, like, you got it. You got something. And I want to see more of you. It just, right now, you know, it didn't work today, but, you know, they had us cut a promo, the 5 finalists, had us cut a quick promo. And my brother and I had talked about tag team promo, not even thinking in a singles mentality, because no one looks at us as singles, right? So it's like I kind of put myself in a corner, like, oh, I'm a tag wrestler. So I'm not going to say I had the best singles promo. I didn't really think of anything to say. I kind of like just combined what we were saying as a team, as an individual. Could have been better. If it was better, that might have helped, but I'm not going to get hung up on those details. But he had been tweeted the next day about me. And I was sitting at Raw in Cincinnati because I went to do some extra work while we were up in Ohio. I was like, oh, look, Raw's in Cincinnati the next day. So let's shoot a couple emails out, and they invite us to come down. So I'm sitting like in the locker room, extras locker room at Raw, and then I pull up my phone and tweet from Lance Storm, like mentioning me. Well, let's see what CD said. And yeah, he put me over huge. So I was like, that was cool, because legitimately he was one of those guys growing up. Like, I love Lance Storm and Battle Royals. I'm a big Battle Royal and Royal Rumble fan. So as a kid, that was always the coolest thing to, like, I love the King of the Mountain idea, not the TNA match, like just being the last guy standing. I love elimination style things, which is why you need to come see me in New Texas on July 22nd when we have our elimination warfare match. I know we're going to get there. But quick plug.
Of course.
But he was always a battle royal guy, right? Like, he would get down to the 3 last, 4 last. He didn't always win it, but, like, I was a big fan of him in his, like, he was a no-nonsense guy. I gravitated towards people like him and Kurt Hennig. I like the wrestlers. So that was really cool. And I still keep in touch with him. He's invited me down to Impact, especially when they're, like, in the Orlando area. So I've gotten to go and, you know, meet some people and try to do a little bit of networking. So hope some pans out with that. We'll see. But he's always super receptive. If I want to shoot him like a recent match, he'll watch it. He'll give me feedback. So it's a really cool person to have in my corner.
I mean, I can just see there's a running trend throughout your whole career. There's always someone of high caliber, you know, talent in the wrestling business, always by your side helping you out. And that just sounds like a dream come true for any professional wrestler, of course. I do want to ask one question, though, and, you know, I don't want this question to stir up any drama. I just am curious, of course. Was there any sort of, I don't know, I guess, little bit of jealousy that Erik Lockhart was kind of more over than Andrew, would you say? Or
I mean, I wouldn't. That's subjective, because I wouldn't always say that was the case. First impressions, a lot of times, sure, like, people would gravitate towards me, maybe bookers would gravitate towards me. But man, you leave Andrew to his own devices. When we first split at Reality of Wrestling, like, Andrew broke out, and, like, I was kind of instructed to just keep doing the tag team thing, but as a singles guy. Andrew created a whole new presentation, and he became a very popular character on Reality of Wrestling very fast. So yeah, like, I was always looked at as the good guy or whatever, but, like, left to his own devices, Andrew can get over just fine. Like, he has no problem with that. Are we competitive? Absolutely, 100%. Maybe me more so. Andrew's a lot more, like, giving, like, oh yeah, let Erik have his moment or anything. If Andrew gets his moment, I'm kind of like, that should kind of be my moment. Like, I'm very competitive. Like, I want to succeed. Like, I see every little task that can be accomplish, and I want to be the one accomplishing it. Or I at least want to be right there accomplishing it side by side. So was there ever any jealousy or controversy? A little bit here and there. We would definitely not always see eye to eye. And Andrew would be like, this is working for me as a solo act, so this is what we should incorporate as a team. And he wasn't always wrong. It's just you got to be also true to yourself. And like, I can't pretend to be something because people are going to see through it. I can always grab something and be entertaining with it, because we've just had to learn to do that with our different experiences and opponents throughout the years. But competition-wise, it was there for a while. I don't think it's there so much anymore. We're rather supportive of each other. Have we talked about tag team stuff? Yeah, but I'm really focused on my single stuff right now, and he understands that. Never say never, of course. But right now, like we're gonna see what Erik Lockhart can do as a singles competitor. So.
Yeah. And of course, your brother, again, another greatly talented guy, reinventing his character. And I bet some of that acting passion kind of does carry on to that professional wrestling of building up your own character. So bet there's that. I do got so nearing the end here, I do want to talk about your of course your 205 live match. Of course, WWE biggest promotion in the world for professional wrestling, and any chance you can get for just even a 2-minute, local competitors match is still a huge match if you're a part of it. So I guess I want to start off with your 205 live match with Everrise, now known as 2.0 in AEW, who you also faced in AEW Dark. You wrestled there with your brother. How did you manage to get into that 205 live Dark match? How was that preparation? Because I feel like there is still a little bit of somehow of a bigger caliber of preparation you have to do because it is the biggest promotion. Would you say so?
Yeah, sure. Things were different at the time because that was 2020 and they were stuck in Orlando, and they were down at the Amway Center in Orlando, and they had, rented that thing out for months and months and months, had multiple pay-per-views there and stuff. And we were on hand a lot because they would have to use who they could get locally. The guy that was running Extra Town at the time was an NXT referee, Drake Wirtz. And he took a liking to Andrew and I because we showed up on time. We were respectful. He got to see us on social media and stuff. And he's like, oh, you guys are good. Like he said, you guys are actually good. This is how he put it. Because like they see a lot of people come in that like they're newer to wrestling or like just haven't had proper training. So it's a little touch and go. It's a little rough sometimes. But he kind of made it his mission, Drake did, like try to get us as much opportunity as he could because he felt like we'd been around a while. We'd given back to wrestling. He saw that we helped train. He knew that we had that connection with Booker. And he wanted to get us an opportunity. So anytime like they were talking about, oh, we need a couple guys for this or that, he would always try to insert our names. So that 205 day, it was September 11th in 2020. Obviously remember it because September 11th. And I showed up. We got called last minute. Didn't have a tan on or anything, which you can see in those photos. But that drive me nuts. I'm like, hey, man, we've been here so many times, or we didn't do anything. And the one time I don't tan. But yeah, he was like, hey, you guys are gonna have a match on 205. So it went well. We got really good feedback. They had called us back. They want us back like for that NXT, because that was on a Friday, and so they wanted us back Tuesday for NXT. Well, we had done, or Wednesday. I can't remember the timetable now, but we were at the following Raw, and then we got a message Monday night. Hey, can you be there Wednesday for the NXT taping? I think we had a day in between. Like, okay. And the plan is to use us for another tag match on NXT now. And then someone at the Performance Center got COVID, and a bunch of people there started getting COVID, and they shut it down. And the extras kind of got blamed, which wasn't even true. Like it was someone like in the PC that got sick, someone employed there. And then they stopped using extras as much. So like we had that little window there where they were like, oh, these guys are pretty good. We can start bringing, and then just didn't materialize. But oddly enough, like you said with AEW Dark, that was the next year, exact same day. It was September 11th, 2021. then we wrestled 2.0 in a different company.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like we told them, like, we wrestled you last year. Oh yeah, no, literally on this day last year. Like, oh really? Like it was September. Yeah, and then like we were sitting in the locker room, and Matt Menard came over to me with his phone. He's like, look, like someone had tweeted it, like, oh, a year ago today, like Lockhart's wrestled Ever Rise, and then we were wrestling that same day. So like we were sitting there, like, okay, after that match, like I guess we'll see you guys next year at Impact or something. But no, they're doing well. So and they were cool to work with. They were fun. So
and that was just by pure coincidence, right? Like
100%. I knew when we got that, because that was the first ever AEW Dark. That was, well, I mean, the first one that they did at Universal Studios when they started changing to that format. And I knew once we were booked, I was like, I have a feeling, because once I learned it was September 11th, I have a feeling we're going to wrestle 2.0. Both Andrew and I had said that, and then we show up and we see our names on the board for 2.0. There you go. It was meant to be. So,
man, maybe Tony Khan's just really researching WWE stuff, and like we need this long-term storytelling.
This is homework too, yeah.
So I guess my final big question here, of course, you have a huge match coming up on Summer of Champions, July 15th. You'll be in a 6-man ladder match for the ROW Television Championship. And, you know, there is a little bit of heat between you and Rudy Garza, of course, the cocky Rudy Garza. How do you think you'll fare in this upcoming match?
It's wild, man. Like a lot of every time I've been advertised for a ladder match in Texas, like it ends up not happening. Like I was Christmas Chaos some years ago. I was supposed to be in a 4-way #1 contender ladder match. Things got changed last minute, and like I ended up being taken out of it. And then I was supposed to have the one with Max Heights at New Texas, and the Max Heights no-showed because he knew I was going to beat him. So, like, if people think I'm creative just having a regular singles match, wait until I got toys to play with. Like, when I got multiple ladders and multiple bodies and stuff, and there's something on the line that I want, like we said, we need to build that resume. I need to get some belts under my belt. So like we need championships to ascend to more championships, because like I'm focused on the TV title right now at Row. But that's only so I can get the Texas title and get to the Reality Wrestling heavyweight title. Like I want to build up that ladder. So that was good. Literally, I'm gonna climb that ladder. Rudy is he's a problem. Like I wouldn't say I have heat with him. I would say everybody has heat with Rudy. Like he likes to run his mouth. He just does. I appreciate the confidence. I get it. My heat's actually kind of more with Charmel right now. I'm not gonna lie, because like I won that #1 contendership.
Yeah.
But if you want me to beat 5 guys like to win a title, then well, you got to find 5 new contenders then. So do I want Rudy one-on-one? Sure. But I also want to hit Rudy with a ladder. So I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I saw you win the #1 contendership. And you beat Diego De La Cruz, and he's in the match now too.
Yeah, see, because Emilio Tovar got involved, so Diego didn't get a fair shake, is how Charmel's putting it. But it's like, okay, so the guy that ruined the match, you put Emilio in it too.
Erik, I'm so sorry, man. This is terrible. But and of course,
sour grapes. But like I realize the gravity of the situation. The Summer Champions is going to be the biggest Summer Champions they've ever had. It's a 9th one. We're back in the Humboldt Civic Center. That's where the first 2 were, and I was on both of those, the first 2 Summer Champions years ago. And like both of the Summer Champions that were in Humboldt, I won my matches. Like in that venue at Summer Champions, Erik Lockhart hasn't been beat. So I plan to keep that momentum rolling. And 6 guys, ladder match, it's going to be a highlight match of the show. Like there's going to be stuff everyone's going to be pulling it all out. So it's a can't miss. And with all the other things going on in the show, there's a women's battle royal, a 12-carat diamond battle royal. There's a cage match in the main event. We got the debut of Zilla Fatu. It's going to be an insane show. So like I'm happy to be on it. I'll be more happy to win on it.
Of course. I mean, you're like the Undertaker of the Humboldt Civic Center, so.
That's serious, cute.
And again, like you also mentioned earlier, I think July 22nd, you have that eliminator match, right?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, the the Elimination Warfare. It's a elimination rules, obviously, 5-on-5. So think Survivor Series like. That's down in Pasadena, Texas. That's a Campbell Hall, so it's behind the Pasadena Convention Center in that same area. You can get tickets, information on newtexaspro.com. So that match is important for like completely different reason. It's not the opportunity, it breeds opportunity. The sole survivors, if there's one, if there's 4 or 5, like if everyone on the team wins, any survivors on the winning team gets a guaranteed opportunity of their choosing. Like you basically get a favor from New Texas in the next calendar year. So if you want to use that favor to compete for a championship, to settle a grudge, to, I don't know, book the show for the night. Like I don't know if there's any limitations on these favors, but I want it, man. And I want Max Heights. Like I'm so happy that he's on the team. I called Q as soon as I learned Q was captain of a team. Q, I need to be on this team. And like, first draft pick for Team Q. Happy to be here. And I'm going to get my win over Max Heights, and then we'll focus on eliminating everyone else. But, like, I want him first. I've already told the guys in that match. Like, okay. And guys and girls, because we have Rachel Rose on our team. Like, when Max tags in, I want him. That's all I'm asking for. I want him because I need getting that win over him. Like, Grant, I know we still need to get back to our number one contenders match because he's technically the number one contender at New Texas Pro right now. So I need that win. And a win here, a pinfall over him, submission over him, eliminate him from this match just helps my case more to like, okay, let's get this rematch happening for that number one contendership. Let's get a definitive number one contender, and then it's on to the New Texas Championship.
Yeah, I mean, and I believe the opposing team, it's Eighth Day, Max Heights, and Royalties International, I believe.
Is that Rudy's group?
Yeah, Rudy's group.
Yeah, Rudy and Bo. Yes, correct.
Yes. And we actually just had Eighth Day again on our podcast last episode, and we were discussing the same exact match. And they also mentioned you. I mean, I don't mean to stir up drama. I mean to stir up drama, of course.
Yeah.
Just calling your whole team, Mysterious Q, Erik Lockhart, a bunch of heathens. So Haram, the team of Haram. I was like, you can't be doing this. Erik Lockhart's my favorite wrestler, man. You can't. So I guess I want to end this off with a little rapid fire questions. I do want to name like a superstar that I believe that you've been associated with in some sort of capacity. And you can do like a phrase or just a single word to describe what you feel about these superstars. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. First one, we talked about them a little bit. 2.0, Angelo Parker and Matt Menard.
Professionals.
Second, we have Ricardo Rodriguez or Jesus Rodriguez.
My birthday brother. Like February 17th is both of our birthdays, and learned a ton from him. Like true bro in wrestling. Like it's great. We didn't only train together. We played Pokemon Go together because that was a thing at the time. Like he was a blessing to meet down here in Orlando.
You guys are true besties.
Yeah.
Third, we have EC3. Did you ever get to really?
I believe he was in that Battle Royal, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that was the one interaction I had with him. Don't remember interactions backstage. I can't give a whole lot on that personally anyway.
Okay. Ryan Davidson.
Ryan Davidson. Man, every time we lock up, we have a lot of fun. Ryan and I have a fun relationship because I'll call him out on like the stuff that I look at as BS. And like he was the first person I kind of butt heads with at Row, and we've kind of always had a little bit of a contentious relationship, but it's also bred on respect. I'll never forget that my brother and I were moving from, like I said, apartment to apartment down there, and there was one time we were moving, no one came to help us besides Ryan Davidson. Like he came and helped us move, and like that's how I'm gonna remember Ryan. So
just a straight up guy, man.
Straight up guy.
Number 5, Tessa Blanchard.
Man, I miss training with Tessa a lot, honestly. And that's you like to pull controversial names, don't you?
Yeah, of course.
Tessa and I always got along super well. Always saw eye to eye in the ring. it was one of those things where a lot of people didn't know me when I came down to Orlando, and then they trained with me 1 or 2 times, and she was one of those people again to say like, "You're really good." I'm like, well, thank you. Like, and then she wanted to train with me. She wanted to learn from me. She would learn something from me and then show me video like, "Look, I used this weekend, like in a match." It was just, I miss training with her because she gets in the ring and the practice like you play, like Tessa believes that. So it was always fun to mix it up with her. And like we even had a match with her and Caden Carter. So it was that was the last intergender tag match we've had, last intergender match I've had, period. And we had a lot of fun. Like I advise to go look that up to anyone that hasn't seen it. Lockhart's versus Tessa Blanchard and Lacey Lane, which was Caden's name at the time. So the entertaining match. We put in a lot of time, but we had a lot of entertainment throughout that match. A lot of wrestling too. Yeah.
Yeah. Mysterious Q.
Team Q, baby. Oh, well, excited them up. Yeah. Q's one of those guys, man. He's a bro. There's just a lot of respect there. And I've told Q and B Keith many times, like, you guys are stars because they walk and talk it and they show it in the ring. Like, Q puts in a lot of work. His biggest doubter is himself. And whenever you see him get past that, there's no stopping Q. I've always loved sharing the ring with him, training. I'll tell a quick Q story, but that's okay. Like, I know this is supposed to be rapid fire.
Of course. No, that's fine.
But like we loved, my brother and I kind of got into ribbing a lot down in Houston because we would see the same people all the time. Bruce Pritchard had come around and said that was the closest thing to WWE you're going to find in the Indies because we all trained together all week, and then we saw each other on the weekends for the events. So we were always with each other. It's like, this is what it's like in WWE, where you get to live with these people pretty much. So it was definitely our extended family. So to alleviate some of the stresses of just everyday wrestling and bumping and the stress of like, what am I doing this week? And we would pull a lot of pranks. And Q got really heavy into that. So he put tape over the sink in the bathroom at one point in the women's restroom because he wanted to like spray the girls or whatever. Andrew had come in and there was someone using the men's room. So he's like, okay, I'm just popping the girls quick. Like I just need to like use the restroom and wash my hands, get out of there. So he comes out, shirt soaked, and Q's just sitting there like, he's like, yeah, I think something's wrong with the sink. Q's like, what do you mean? He's like, something's wrong with the sink. And Q was like, what bathroom were you in? Like, the women's room? And then Q just started laughing because he put tape over the sink. So when you turn it on, it just shot out. But like, he didn't expect Andrew to go in there. He was trying to get some of the diamonds to like go in there and like catch a wet shirt. But like Andrew, came out just dripping. So like, that was fun. There was okay. One other story with Q. I don't know if I've ever told him this. And I'm debating whether or not I should say it. It's okay. There's statute of limitation on these things. There's and he knows it was me. I just never admitted it. There was one time like Q was warming up or whatever, and he had his mask off backstage. And it like he had it tucked in his pants, and it like fell out when he was doing warm-ups or something. He went off into the locker room because we were out in like a common area. So I grabbed it and hid it. And then while he was in the locker room, Booker's like, we need to film a promo live right now. So get your mask on, let's go. And then he couldn't find his mask. So I didn't know all this commotion was happening in the locker room. And then he comes out and like, there was like, I heard all this noise and everything. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And Booker comes storming out before Q even answers anything. He was like, if someone took Q's mask, I want it back right now. And this better not be a rib. And he like looks right at me because I guess I had the reputation. And I'm like, no idea where it is, but I'll help him look for it. I'm telling you, I'm like, kid you not, I found that thing in like 20 seconds. Easy. Like, I don't even know how he lost it. I'm like, Q, it took me no time at all. It's right here. It's behind this travel case or whatever. It's because I hid it. Like, but like, yeah, Q was sweating because Booker was mad. He was like, yeah, okay.
Were you sweating about it, or were you it's whatever?
Because I didn't take the blame for it. I have no idea what happened, but here it is. So like, I was the hero. But like, I think both Book and Q knew what was up.
So you're just a good liar.
A worker.
A worker, of course. Seven, we talked about him a little bit, of course, but Honky Tonk Man.
I love Honky Tonk. Like I said, I told kind of my two good Honky Tonk stories, but I miss him a lot. Haven't seen him in ages. There's people that I know that have seen him on shows. Like, hey, do you remember Erik Lockhart? I sure do. Like, he remembers like my brother and I, and like enjoyed traveling with us, and always took us as good people. And likewise, like I take Honky as great people. There was one time where there was one show when Honky was like, I would never, if he was watching one of the other wrestlers drink, I would never drink before a show. I would never disrespect anyone like that. Like, because he could see the wrestler was starting to get drunk. He's like, that's dangerous and that's unsafe. And I've never, he told me, like, I've never gotten drunk before a show. Like, I'll drink afterwards and party, but never got drunk before a show. That night, he got drunk before the show because it was like an open bar for the wrestlers.
Yeah.
And like, I was wrestling him in the ring, and like, we got through it, but like he was definitely feeling good.
Was he gonna throw up on you? Or?
No, just like kind of slurring words, didn't really have his balance about him. Got in the back, and he like just laid down on a couch, and he kind of hung out there until he had to go back out for the main event. Like, yeah, but he's feeling real good that night. It's something like, were you ribbing? Were you actually, you never drank before a match? Because seemed pretty comfortable doing it, but.
I mean, Honky Tonk Man can do it. Doesn't mean you should.
No. I don't condone it. He may have been working me too. Honestly, like he may have just been acting like he was drinking just to keep the kind of that joke going that he was saying, like, I would never be that unprofessional, and then to go out there and do it. So like I was young, I wouldn't have even known if I was getting ribbed at the time. So.
Next person we have is Danny Duggan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. Worked Danny one time up in Canada, and it was really cool. Like one of the female wrestlers had put in a word for me because she was going to travel up there. So it was my first time outside the U.S. Danny was putting together the show, and he's like, well, I'll work with the guy that you're bringing. And he came up to me. He's like, what do you think? Like, can you go out there and get in the mic and like do some anti-Canada, pro-America stuff? Absolutely. And like he didn't know anything about me, but I went out there and he trusted me a ton. Like I had a couple ideas. He was very receptive. I made a kid cry in the audience that night because he like stepped towards me when I was outside the ring, and I like turned and like yelled at him, and then he started crying. So like I got back in the ring, and Danny bumped me or whatever and rolled out of the ring to check on the kid, and get that like nice baby face like energy going. So yeah, Danny was a pleasure to work with. Only got to mix up with him one time. He wrestled my brother years later in a singles match as well when Andrew went back up to the Midwest. So yeah, nothing but good things to say about Danny.
Next, we have Daniel Garcia.
Okay, I want a rematch, honestly. Yeah, like remember my dad watching that match back, not being a big fan. He's like, he ate you up. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of the job.
Yeah.
I'd wrestled 2.0 like a little bit before that. It was all in the same taping. But yeah, Daniel was fun. There was a lot of people involved with that match. Christopher Daniels had helped out a lot. It gave his 2 cents on what we should do and how we should go about it. I got a lot of good feedback from that match too, coming in the back. And like, I know our ref was Aubrey. She came back. That match was a lot of fun. It was quick, obviously, like a lot of the dark matches were. She was like, that was a lot of fun. That was intense. And yeah, Danny brings it. So I love mixing up with people that you can feel in the ring, and like you can feel everything Danny does. So
maybe that rematch can be a dance-off, man. I mean, do you see what he's doing now?
Feeling it. Yeah, man. And it's funny when you think about him. That's all you think about now. Like that's how wrestling works.
I mean,
but at least because people couldn't imitate Daniel Garcia before. If you're like, show me your Daniel Garcia impression. Now they can. They can do something. Like, yeah, and you'll know. Yeah.
So I guess last question isn't like last. This isn't even a wrestler. I was just curious throughout the whole interview. So you've been around America. You've been even in Canada. Where is your favorite place to work? And as a Houstonian, I won't be offended if it's not Houston.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about. Like, there's different audiences. So I mean, there's some Midwest towns that I had a blast working in. Like every time I go there, Scales Mound, Illinois was one. Just like random cities. I was like Silver Lake, Minnesota. There's just certain ones you would go to and you'd get kind of excited. But man, like I love working in Houston too. That's like where my wrestling family is, audience and locker room. Like we weren't even there. Like I didn't wrestle in Houston as long as I wrestled in the Midwest, or as long as I've been in Orlando. But like we were such a tight knit group of people there. And we were wrestling every day of the week. We would train 5 days a week. My brother and I kind of bred a different environment down there. A lot of people would go like once or twice a week, and we're like, if you're at the show, you should be here every day of the week. We should be putting the time in. And reality wrestling really elevated. And I take a lot of pride in being a part of that because I was training a lot of the people that like we see on top of reality wrestling now. So like I would say I like wrestling in Houston. Love going back there. It's home. Like it's wrestling home to me.
Is there any place that you hate wrestling in?
No, not really. I'm not a huge fan of Orlando. Honestly, it's just so saturated down here. There's so much wrestling that like the audience is seeing everything down here.
Yeah.
And so like I love training down here because there's the hub. Obviously, a lot of wrestling people are in Orlando. There's a lot of experienced people that you can learn from. There's a lot of people you can rub elbows with and like just have a lot of fun with. So training down here is great. I wrestle in Texas more than I wrestle in Florida currently. So I'm gonna tell you something.
Yeah.
It's not for a lack of like events down here. Just if the right thing comes along, I'm certainly all for it. But I wouldn't say I hate wrestling anywhere. Like I've never had like a super bad. There's some bad experiences up in the Midwest where like people didn't want to see wrestling at their local bar that night because we'd wrestle in bars a lot too, just wherever you could put a ring. And there were some bad experiences in towns that I would never want to go back to. But I honestly blocked them out. Can't even remember the name of them. So I just know it's some Midwest town, something in Minnesota, something in Wisconsin.
So I guess in the final couple minutes of this interview right here, I'll let you have the floor and just post your social medias or just what events are coming up soon for you. What's new with Erik Lockhart?
Okay, yeah, we'll start with so now we'll end with socials. So the main events coming up the next couple weekends, what we've already talked about. July 15th, Humble, Texas, Summer Champions 9. You can get your tickets at realityofwrestling.com. Bell time is 7 p.m. And then New Texas Pro Wrestling, July 22nd, sorry. That's down in Pasadena, Texas. That's newtexaspro.com. Also 7 p.m. start time. So come check me out if you're in the Houston area. I mean, heck, we're north and south of Houston, so like we touch everybody. It's gonna be a fun couple weeks of wrestling. A lot of multi-man matches are a blast. My specialty. I love having a bunch of people to play with. So then social media wise, Twitter, Erik at Erik_Lockhart, Erik with a K. And then Instagram, flip it, Lockhart_Erik, because that guy that has Erik_Lockhart would not let it go. He doesn't even post. I've looked. So yeah, Instagram, Lockhart_Erik, Twitter, Erik_Lockhart. It's kind of bit for social media. You can find me on Facebook too. Not super active on there. So just search Erik Lockhart. I'm there. If you want to support, we still have the Brothers Lockhart Pro Wrestling Tees page. So Pro Wrestling Tees /Brothers Lockhart. ProWrestlingTees.com/Brothers Lockhart. Yeah. So Twitter, Instagram. Instagram's where I'm most active. So if you want to reach out to me, if you want to connect with me, Lockhart_Erik on Instagram.
Yeah. And well, of course, thank you again, Erik, for joining us on this podcast, having a great time sharing your story. I really, really had a great time. And of course, you guys at home, follow Erik, follow us, of course, subscribe, follow us on Spotfiy, all the social media stuff, like, comment, do whatever you want. Thank you so much for watching. And of course, stay restless.